Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's fourth session, the Digital Blockade, Economic Hardships, and the Fight for Survival in Gaza. Before October 2023, Gaza's digital blockade already shocked economic opportunities and threatened the daily survival of millions. Over the past year and a half, these impacts only have intensified. While millions of dollars have been raised internationally to support those enduring genocide in Gaza, many have seen firsthand how difficult it is for that support to reach those who need it most. Today, we'll delve into the immense barriers Palestinians face in accessing international financial support, digital payment platforms, and global markets. Barriers made worse by infrastructure destruction, internet restrictions, and targeted deplatforming. We'll also examine the role of major corporations, such as PayPal, in perpetuating these hardships, and we will discuss what accountability and justice could look like. By connecting Gaza's struggle to global financial systems, we hope to underscore the urgent need to dismantle these barriers. Let me now introduce our great panelists. We are really thankful to have the three of you among us today. First of all, Waad Abbas is the Palestine Programs and Communications Director at Mecca. Waad is an advocate and researcher focused on Palestine, human rights, and humanitarian issues. She combats apartheid, genocide, and anti-Palestinian racism, promotes ethical humanitarian practices, and raises awareness of systemic injustices through grassroots partnerships. Gayatri Khandadai serves as the head of tech accountability at the Business and Human Rights Resource Center. Gaia is a lawyer with a background in international law and human rights, with extensive experience in research and advocacy, particularly around freedom of expression, online and offline. And last but not least, Mahmoud Zant is the Director General of the Social Developmental Forum, SDF. Mahmoud specializes in digital transformation for the nonprofit sector, leads digital empowerment initiatives, and has been instrumental in developing community responses to digital and economic challenges in Gaza. So let me first now start the conversation. And I would like to start today with Waad. Waad, could you please give us an overview of the current economic landscape in Gaza amid the genocide?
Thank you so much, Taysir, and for everyone being here to join on this conversation. As we all know, Gaza has been living under an extremely exhausted existence since before the genocide started in October 2023. The Israeli policy with its blockade over the Gaza Strip, which is inching towards 18 years now, basically worked on keeping Palestinians in Gaza on a survival mode, or keeping basic needs covered but not allowing any opportunity to thrive or flourish in any shape or form, which affected every aspect of life in occupied Gaza, from food sovereignty and security to being able to connect to global international markets and so on. We're talking about an unemployment rate of 60% from before the genocide, and now it exceeds 80%. And these numbers, of course, could be much higher, as it's really hard to kind of do any kind of accurate calculation amid the ongoing genocide. And almost all of Gaza is dependent on aid compared to the previously 50 or 60% from before the genocide. When it came to financial interactions, whether local or international, there were many limitations, including restrictions on local and international transfers, or having individuals and institutions go through a thorough vetting process to make sure there are no links to quote-unquote terrorism, according to either donors' terms, and I have to say, even they are right now much more aggressive amid the ongoing genocide, or monetary laws and regulations. But nothing of what happened before compares to the current situation right now. By the end of March 2024, all bank branches and ATMs in occupied Gaza were entirely out of service. And since people in Gaza continue to try to fix as much as possible to continue going, as of December 2024, a few months later, there were only a handful of branches of ATM working. Right now, we have 3 semi-functional out of the 94 already existing ones that were completely destroyed. When we say operating, of course, it's very humble to say in some cases it was merely an employee with a notebook and a pen following up, basically on paper. Liquidity is currently the main issue in terms of financial transactions, as it is extremely scarce to have cash on hand due to many factors, including, but not limited to, the looting that the Israeli army have done to major banks in Gaza. For instance, the estimates of what was stolen from the Bank of Palestine before it was completely destroyed, I think the estimates are 54 million. From all of the banks, all of together, we're talking about at least 180 million. And then add to that the tens of thousands that were paid, like as in another method where we had the smugglers who took, right now, like the estimates are millions and billions of dollars from families in Gaza to help them escape during the first few months of the genocide, which is now, of course, it's not even possible. But all of this meant emptying Gaza from physical cash on the ground. And there are many other methods as well that were happening amid the ongoing genocide. And on top of that, we have entities that could be referred to as, and I'm using black market for like lack of words, black market money exchangers who take extremely high amounts of interest per each cash withdraw and transaction, where the interest rate would reach 30% per each withdraw, which even like some families and some people, it's really small amounts originally. Like we're talking about 300 or 400 US dollars, and then you have at least 30% taken out of it. And you can, calculate that for bigger amounts when it comes to bigger institutions and organizations and so on. In some extreme cases, this percentage has reached 40%, but now the average is between 35% and 30%, even though it started at 10 or 12. And it keeps on increasing as long as the genocide is still ongoing. So all of us are working in beyond challenging circumstances and basically on survival mode. We weren't merely just facing these financial issues of getting cash and sometimes transferring money into Gaza, but we were also met with communications blackout that had some extreme cases towards the beginning of the genocide. It was towards the end of October and early November. They were the worst periods, but still there, until this very day, there are no stable communications inside of Gaza. As almost everyone who was speaking up on what's happening in Palestine, we, among others, were subjected to shadow bans and having some of our content online taken down. And this could be applied to everyone who was basically working on covering the genocide or working on responses to what was happening, whether it was online or on the ground. And I'll end it here.
Thank you so much, Wad. You talked about unemployment rate, you talked about liquidity issues and how getting cash is very, very complicated right now. So to go further into our discussion, I wanted now to ask Mahmoud. So Wad talked about physical blockade. How is the digital blockade used as an extension of the physical blockades? And also if you could especially talk about the discrimination in digital services and how it impacts essential services, vulnerable groups, but also businesses.
Okay, thank you, Taysir and Wad for good overall overview for the situation in Gaza Strip. Since October 2023, there is no service in Gaza Strip completely. Here we speak about the two line. The blockade, it's not just physical related, the borders or the guards and something like that. The practices or the operation for the occupation in Gaza Strip, including any source of life for the people in Gaza Strip. Since October 2023, there are no basic service. The health sector, it's stopped. The economic sector, the private sector, and the local service provider cannot do anything without any sources. Here we speak about the financial sources and the movement and the digital solution or the communication. Without the communication, we don't have any startup companies. We don't have to access for any system for the health, for example, for the insurance, for the education. We speak about stop for all the levels of life in Gaza. For example, if we speak about the crisis for the humanitarian level, we are a local organization. We have a lot of intervention to support our people in Gaza Strip, but we work without any infrastructure. That means we don't have any quality, and our response in normal it's have faced a lot of challenges on the logistic level and in the reach for the communities already we work with them in the Gaza Strip. The situation in general, it's very difficult, and the blockade, it's two line, as I say or I mentioned. The physical blockade, it's very important for the life, and the digital blockade, it's very important for stop the life, stop for stop any source of to support the people in Gaza Strip. Without communication network and without internet sources or service in Gaza Strip, we cannot do anything. Here I speak about the non-profit sector, but I also speak about the formal system for the basic service and the private sector. The challenges, it's wide and big. I think all the facilities now it's a stop in Gaza. For example, we have a solution for the cash and the transfer, but it's not enough, and it will be very basic without any real benefit or support for the people in Gaza. This is the situation. 2023, we have around 15 times the all communication in Gaza Strip. It has stopped. The families cannot contact with any members of family or any organization. The UN agency work with any clear plan or infrastructure, and the local organization in the same situation. This is the situation in general in Gaza. If we speak about the education, we don't have any infrastructure to start education, for example. We don't have school, we don't have universities. But if we think about the new solution for the e-learning or using the digital solution, we don't have any facilities in this level because we don't have infrastructure. We lose the internet. Before 2023, we have a limited sources for the internet service, but you can imagine now we use a basic tools. We used a manual tools for our work, but if we speak about the education, we cannot do anything. I know, and if you know, the university in Gaza are trying to do anything to support the student in Gaza, but the student faced a technical issues. The student cannot reach for the internet easily. The student haven't any devices, for example. Since 2023, if I have any smartphone in our organization for my team, if it defect, I don't have any source, or I cannot buy or sell buy any new devices in Gaza Strip. This is the situation now. The physical borders blockade, it's included all the facilities for the life. The digital blockade, it's in the same line of the same process for the occupation procedures or practices in Gaza every day. Every day we have a solution and an idea to support the people, but we don't have capacity to do that. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much, Mahmoud. And to continue in this line, so Gaia, we learned from Mahmoud now how the digital blockade functions in Gaza. So I wanted to ask you specifically, what's the role of tech companies in this digital blockade and how they are contributing to the issues Waad and Mahmoud just mentioned now?
Thank you. I'm Gaia. I work with the Business and Human Rights Resource Center, where we've been tracking links and allegations made against a whole range of sectors in Gaza since October 2023. What has become extraordinarily clear to us over the last 2 years of monitoring is that tech companies have been in the spotlight in a range of allegations around human rights violations and humanitarian law violations. While many of the issues that my colleagues talked about falls within the responsibility of states to not cause harm, there is a responsibility for tech companies as well, both under the UN guiding principles as well as international humanitarian law, to fulfill certain responsibilities, especially responsibility to respect these rights. What we've consistently noted is that there's a range of issues that these companies are implicated in, ranging from censorship, provision of surveillance technologies, to essentially allegations around having active contracts with the state, which is implicated in allegations of genocide and a whole range of war crimes. So in those circumstances, tech companies at a very, very minimum should have done heightened human rights due diligence to demonstrate both to themselves and to their customers and to everyone else the measures they are going to take to minimize the harm that is being experienced in these areas. And what we've noted is that when we tried to reach out to about 99 companies to ask them about these efforts that they've taken, most companies did not respond. We got about 4 responses, which also demonstrates to us the absolute lack of transparency on a very critical step, which these companies should have taken before either continuing or stopping services in conflict-affected areas, particularly Gaza. Given the history, given the long-standing issues, none of these companies should have been surprised by what was required from them and what they had to cope with. What we are particularly worried about is issues around whether tech companies acknowledge the harms and what is needed at the moment. And there is no real clarity around whether those measures have been taken. What is, however, becoming increasingly clear is the calls from UN and other spaces for companies to act in a more responsible manner with very specific calls. For instance, the UN's call when it comes to the arms sector. And we are seeing, for instance, in the previous panel, we talked, there was discussions around how within the UN and other spaces, there are conversations around how to really provide analysis on what the role of tech companies have been in this conflict and what needs to happen. And I think what is perhaps critically missing at this moment is very clear demonstration of what has happened and what has not happened. And I think to a great extent, it's possibly also because there hasn't been enough of a push from other states to ask for this clarity, which the UN is increasingly getting interested in and is probably going to be asking for. All of this in the broader context of an occupation makes this much more complex and much more problematic. That kind of commitment or willingness to demonstrate what measures have been taken is at the moment not something we've been able to properly analyze and demonstrate to others.
So Gaia, what you're saying is that basically right now there is no way to expect any responsibility measures from those tech companies, right?
No, I wouldn't say there's no way to expect it, right? Because all companies are subject to law. I don't think tech companies are particularly special in that sense. What I'm saying is that there has not been enough pressure outside civil society. Civil society has been consistently monitoring, consistently reporting, but there has not been the kind of pressure that should essentially be required to push for accountability. And I think tech companies themselves can provide a lot more information than what they are at the moment. Our response rates around Gaza are particularly problematic. In fact, the report we referred to where we had asked about 100 companies about what measures they were taking, particularly tech companies, around what measures they were taking to ensure that harm was not going to be caused, what kind of heightened due diligence they were undertaking. We didn't really get a response that we could properly analyze. That in itself is a problem, right? If we are able to get information, then we can analyze and say, okay, these are the gaps. But at that very step of getting information, we are not really able to get through, which means we don't really have a credible way of looking at what kind of due diligence is taking place, which is the fundamental basis on which any decisions can be made around provision of services or, stopping of services. That is not there. And I think that there are a few different ways of going about it, and I think everybody's trying what they can. But I think that there are encouraging examples where investors have stepped away from investments that they felt did not meet the standards they required. Also, instances that I refer to with the UN pressuring. I think what would be really needed is industry leadership for tech companies to demonstrate by themselves that these are the measures that they're taking, which I'm not at the moment in a position to tell you is happening.
Thank you so much, Gaia. I think it's a very important conversation. I don't think we will have time to talk about all the investors' issues and how we could also hold investors accountable, but that's definitely a conversation that we also should have. So let's now talk about, what also Gaia talked about, the pressure or the lack of pressure. And I wanted to ask Waad about it. Could you please reflect on the past 2 years specifically, but also on the past 30 years generally? And what's your specific analysis when it comes to the current aid mechanism? What's working, what's not? We're seeing right now that some aid will now enter the Gaza Strip because of some pressure. So what's your analysis around it, and what's the issues around the current framework of aid that we're using? And this is also a question for Mahmoud, because it's also about the challenges faced by the civil society sector in responding to the humanitarian crisis right now in the Gaza Strip.
Thank you, Taysir. To be honest with you, I know this came up as we were discussing the panel, and I have to say it, right off the bat, I don't have an answer. In a sense that this question in particular has been, and it's not just for me personally, but I would say it's to many of us in this field, whether humanitarian work, whether human rights, whether activists, we've all been asking ourselves, was what we've been doing for the last 30 years or so, has it been working or not? And I have to say it's something that, at least on a personal level and professional, is kind of linked at this point, has always been, it's been haunting a lot of us. And it comes from a place of a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, a lot of agony, a lot of heartbreak. I mean, we're still witnessing the live stream genocide of our people in Gaza in this kind of slow and fast pace at the same time. And then we see all of these very slow and very stingy actions and statements where we have these celebrations, but at the end of the day, look at what's happening. What are we even celebrating? I keep asking this to myself, what have we been doing? For instance, only last July, we had the ICJ rule that this military occupation is illegal after it's almost 60 years old. And then suddenly, because of this, you have these unified, which are all welcome, by the way. And just to be clear, I'm not saying this in a sense where I'm casting blame on us, because the main culprit, it's quite clear. It's Israel and its allies who are abetting and weaponizing and arming and facilitating this ongoing genocide, not just in Gaza, but the rest of Palestine, in different methods and forms and shapes. We can name it whatever it is that we want in legal terms, but it still doesn't change the fact that it's a genocide campaign that's been happening since Nakba. And for instance, right now, we have finally this unified position from humanitarian human rights organizations on the militarization of aid, especially after the stupid, idiotic Trump plan for the humanitarian response in occupied Gaza. And in my head, or ask any Palestinian, like, we know this is like the militarization of aid is not new, right? We've been working by force, of course, with these military figures that are controlling aid since decades ago. I mean, COGAT and CLA, they're not civil institutions. They are part of the Israeli Ministry of Defense, which is effectively the army. They have been controlling everything related to aid, to medical permits, to whatever it is, you name it, to whatever gets in, gets out, etc. For decades now. And for me, it feels like we are seeing this tiny shift of tide shifting, as we keep calling it and celebrating it. But when we measure it on the ground, it feels like, it's a drop in the ocean. And this, like, it's kind of similar to yesterday's aid. They let in 5 freaking trucks where we need at least 600, if not more. So I don't have an answer. I have a lot of anger and frustration. I wish things weren't this slow. I mean, right now we're seeing the UK government is trying to take some kind of action to pressure the Israeli government, but still it's absurd that we still have this room, they still have this room to kind of discuss and like give room for Israel to respond before we won't renew this current arms deal, but if you behave well, we might renew it. And I feel like even or when the genocide stops, and it will not last forever, it doesn't mean the other forms of violence will cease to exist. We still have the settler colonial project going on full force. We still have apartheid. We still have the military occupation. We still have all of these forms of oppression and discrimination happening. And I feel like whatever it is that we've been doing, and even though right now we're on survival mode, so it's extremely hard to do, but I feel like we need to kind of stop for a second and maybe think, is this kind of civil interaction with all of these international bodies and all of these figures, is it like, we're talking about this different forms of violence, like, is it the way to go? Should because we've been, I feel I could go on this rant forever. I feel like everyone shares this frustration. So probably I'll just end it at, it's been frustrating for a lot of us to kind of share even spaces with policymakers, diplomats, and like government heads who literally have blood on their hands. And for us to continue going as if this is the way to go would be, I would say delusional. And I feel like we're at a crossroads where we need to do more. But again, I don't have answers. I just have a lot of anger and frustration, hoping for some kind of action to come out of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Wad. I really think that your anger and frustration is highly shared by everyone. And yeah, I wanted to welcome Mahmoud as well to answer to that.
Thank Wad مرة تانية. It's okay. We have now the fact say that we faced a challenge that the occupation has succeeded in normalization genocide. This is the fact after 1.5 years for the genocide since 2023. But that means we have a complicated situation, but we don't have any option. Just we have one option: continue for our roles and our support for our people in Gaza Strip and in Palestine in general. I think we have a chance to continue our work as a non-profit organization or sector, groups and initiatives to support the right for the people in Gaza Strip for the life. This is the main line for us. And more work to support our rights to access for food, to access for information, to have a freedom or facilities in Gaza Strip in general, and stop this war or genocide immediately. We don't have option, just we have one way, start or continue our work again and again, support and advocate our rights. And I think the lobbying and the advocacy effort in the last year I think it's good, but now we face the normalization for the genocide. It's very important and dangerous point. We need to redesign and make a deeply discussion about our tools and rules. Here I mean here the groups, the movement, and the organization who support the human rights base and the rights for the people and human rights in general in the world. We need to make a new analysis and review our techniques to make a lobbying and effort to push the communities in the Europe and the US to express or to know what happened in Gaza Strip now after 1.5 years, to know that no real life in Gaza, to know how many people killed every day, to know what we need to be normal. For example, I'm from Gaza, but my brother is still there, and every day I'm waiting a news about anything. Okay, in general, to be direct, we just have a chance or way to continue our work and evaluate our tools and mechanism and the advocacy level. But we need to think about another level. We should to design a new intervention for the accountability, especially for the UN agencies and international organizations who work in Palestinian and Gaza, especially since 2023 and now. What we need, or what this organization do in the real life for the Palestinian people in Gaza? What is the role for this organization? We hear, for example, as Wad say about the yesterday the trucks or the aids across the border between Egypt and Gaza Strip. We speak here just about 9 trucks for the aid. It's not enough for 2 person in Gaza Strip. The accountability level, it's important to support the people in Gaza and support the effort for the local organization in Gaza. We must to launch new campaigns to especially for this type or this level of organization, UN agencies and international organization. Why? Because this organization have access to connect with the actor, with the Israeli occupation and coordination for the humanitarian aid and blah, 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 blah. The second point for me, if I speak about the challenges for the non-profit sector in Gaza Strip, the answer is clear here. The local organization in Gaza Strip work without any resources, real resources. We have challenges or faced challenges in the procedure for transfer for money, for support. We don't have, for example, a supplies or goods in the local market to support our people. We need to stop the blockade. We need to stop genocide in Gaza Strip. Then our work starts. You hear from 2023, a lot of fundraising campaigns start everywhere, in the US and the EU and Asia, blah, blah, blah. But we don't have flexible method or way to transfer this money, for example, for the people, for the organization. We have challenges with the banks, with the governments, with PayPal, with all of organization, all of companies, all of financial service companies in the world have a special procedure for the Gaza Strip transfer. This point, it's a big challenge for the organization. We don't have access for our money, for the fund, for the donation to support the people in Gaza. And if we get it, we have another challenges. As Wa'ad mentioned, we don't have cash in Gaza, no cash. And in the same time, if we need to, if we start to using some solution, digital solution, for example, we use a local apps for transfer the money and something like that. But in the same time, we don't have a good infrastructure for the communication. This is the unlogic situation. Main point here, if we need to work and support our people, we need a capacity and we need we need a capacity, we need a fund, and we need a right to work easily without any procedure and without any unfair practices from the occupation and another actors in the area or in the Middle East related with our service and intervention. The challenges, we have a lot of challenges, but we need to work, and we believe that we don't have any option, just work to support our people. I know that a lot of activists feeling now a bad feel or a feeling, and sometimes we don't have the motivation to work, but again and again, just we have one way to support our people in Gaza Strip: work and work and work, advocacy, accountability, the fundraising campaign, and conference and workshop, and increase the awareness effort for all the people in the world to know what happened, and reminder them the genocide, it's not normal thing do every day for the people in Gaza Strip.
Thank you, Mahmoud. You mentioned it, but and I would like it to be our last question. So you talked about the solutions, and especially the local and national ones. And I just wanted to know more about it, but if possible, and I know that we still only have 7 minutes before the end of the session, but I also wanted to ask Gaia afterwards if the ICJ rules that there is a genocide in Gaza, what could be the responsibilities of those tech companies when it comes to digital blockades, and what's their role when it comes to international humanitarian law and international human rights law. So those are two very different questions, but I think that they're really important. So please, if you could answer, both of you. Thank you.
I'm going to make it really, really short, right? Because in this war, there are two issues here when it comes to tech companies. And I think the role of tech companies and arms companies has been really at the spotlight, right? One is omission to take the necessary steps to minimize harm. The second one is commission, where you become accused or allegedly complicit by providing certain services, especially critical infrastructure services, which are reportedly used to commit various crimes, right? So in those instances, companies under international humanitarian law, just as states and non-state actors, including companies, have responsibilities. What is even more clear is that under international humanitarian law, under Rome Statute, individuals can be held liable, right? And the challenge here is that with the mounting evidence, there might be a door opening for liability across different areas. And I think that tech companies would have to demonstrate that they have not violated these laws and that they've taken the measures. So I think that as far as accountability goes, which was just discussed about, I think that exploring questions around how tech companies have fulfilled their responsibilities during this period, I think that is going to be the critical analysis. And to answer your question around ICJ, it's quite clear. As far as the law goes, companies have a responsibility not to be linked to, not to be complicit, not to provide services that are used in the furtherance of commission of a range of violations, whether it's war crimes or crimes against humanity or genocide. Right? That is quite evident. I think there's very little dispute around it. In fact, the law is quite clear that these companies should not be linked to and be profiting from the occupation. So I think the whole range of issues that are here are quite clear in terms of what are the responsibilities of companies. But I would say that all of these laws require these companies to do that assessment on what measures they have taken, how they have fared when it comes to fulfilling these responsibilities. And that I think that's the fundamental question that we need answers to.
Thank you so much, Gaia. And to finish, I just wanted to ask Waad and Mahmoud to talk about those local digital solutions. We only have 4 minutes, but yeah, this is a very important question to finish the conversation on something maybe a bit more hopeful than the whole conversation we had now. Thank you.
I don't think I'll be able to manage in this short time to kind of cover everything. And I think from what I could gather also, there's a lot of parallels in the way we were been handling things on the ground with Mahmoud and the other local Palestinian organizations on the ground working. But I would say that for us, amid the era of shadow banning, of digital blackouts, of automated genocide and apartheid, we found ourselves going back to the basics, or the base of our work at least, which was the huge network of partners and allies that we've been investing in over the past 30 plus years. And I had many examples, which I won't be able to share now, but basically, if I had the chance to share, I would say that all of these kind of examples were pretty primitive or extremely basic. But this is where we found ourselves after months and months working during a monstrous genocide. And Mecca is basically a small, humble organization. So these are the things we were kind of able to do on the spot during what's happening. So Mecca is an organization. It stemmed from a solidarity movement that was created during the First Intifada. And based on that, our way of work has always been on strengthening relationships with individuals, movements, organizations, and whatnot on the ground in Palestine. And for Mecca to merely act as a vessel for whatever they decide is the need or goal at the time, with the hope, to finally reach a free Palestine where we're not even needed anymore. So in a sense, we felt because of all of the digital blackout and restrictions, we opted to go offline in a sense, one shape or form, which is kind of counter the purpose of this forum and this session. But we were forced to basically do things the good old-fashioned way. Well, nothing is good anymore, but the old-fashioned way. We had to literally reach out to people, person by person, email by email, phone call by phone call. When we're talking about, support and fundraising, our fundraising efforts did not stop 1 minute. And even with the shadow banning and whatnot, because of this huge network of people who were working for Palestine on the ground, we were still able to, we were never stopped. We never stopped for a day. The fundraising never stopped. Being able to share about what's happening on the ground also did not stop, despite all of these restrictions that were happening. And I'm not saying this as if, we were coming up with solutions, but we were not. All of these were kind of small wins here and there. But as Mahmoud has said, we couldn't stop. We had to keep going. So we took these small wins. Our team on the ground has took these small wins, and this has kept us going. When it came to issues like, for instance, the cash liquidity, we did our best not to use cash. We relied on bank transfers and wire transfers and whatever financial applications were out there. They are still very limited. I have to say there's so much work that needs to be done on that. And maybe this is a call for local and international banking systems to do better than make lives harder for people who are, because a lot of people in Gaza right now are relying on these applications. Even with the blackout, even with the lack of proper communications, they always manage to find a freaking way to do things. And I think these institutions who are benefiting from everything that's happening, at least make it a little bit easier for people on the ground to actually get access to whatever these services that they need. So we opted to do more of wire transfers and whatnot. And I have to say that we were still faced with sometimes it didn't work. But again, going back to the basics of the networks on the ground, if we couldn't get the wire transfer, a partner will. If one bank account closed, another one will use their bank account. It never stopped. We kept relying on each other on these kind of small steps until the very end to be able to get the job done. I could give many examples, which I won't have the time for, but this is just to say, mirroring Mahmoud, basically that it's small actions, but it meant the world to us to be able to at least get to do that. And we'll always be kind of not doing enough until this genocide is finally over. Sorry for taking too much time.
Thank you so much, Waad, and please, Mahmoud.
Okay, for the hope, our network and our youth group in Gaza Strip and our team don't stop anytime. Since 2023, we continue our intervention with our people, but the difference here, before 2023, we spoke about the digital transformation program and the digitalization for the tools for accountability and the freelancer, blah blah blah. But now we speak about education in the tents, education in the field, solution for the student in the university, support our people in the food parcel and hygiene and water and the basic needs. Okay, this is the real change because we are the real people. When I speak about any organization, I speak about organization or group of people to support the real need for the people in the community. This is our mission. This is our line. But if we speak about the solution, every day we think about the solution. But for the specific example, for the applications for the for the cash level, all people now and banks and local organization and local shops and stores use the bank's application and the electronic wallet. But the challenge is here, we don't have stable internet service. We don't have, a lot of areas in Gaza Strip don't have access for the phones, and normally we don't have the internet. As I say in the first, the university start the virtual programs to support the student, but at the same time we don't infrastructure, we don't devices, and we don't enough internet service and spaces for the student. And for the priority, if I speak about the priority, if the student in Gaza and the university, the priority for any student now, the food and the water, then I can speak about the device and laptop and the subscribe for the internet. This is the one cycle. I cannot speak about the solution without any link between needs for the people. I cannot speak about the gender, for example, and recreational activity without food. If I have a children without food, I cannot do anything to support them in the education and the recreational and this is one cycle. And for the local organization level, we have challenges, but we have a way and trying every day to make or find a new solution for the transfer. Some banks, as I would say, if the bank closed the account, we search for a new one. But here in the way or between this and this, we have another difficult way. If I have a fund from US and I cannot receive it, maybe I need to coordinate with a private company to receive it, then send to me again and take a commission or interest. It's very high. This way it's complicated and take long time and take a lot of financial sources for any organization or a group. For example, in the work level for the organization, we now as an organization have a hybrid structure or way. We have WhatsApp group, for example. We have teams. We have local network mobile to connect with our team. We have 3 offices. After 2023, just we have 1, but now we pay for the office 1, now 3. We have a lot of tools, because if we don't have access for normal internet, we use eSIM. This is the complicated and difficult way to continue our work, but it's just in the real life, it's a solution. If we speak about,
I'm very sorry, we are out of time, but it's a very important and interesting.
yes, in general, in the final, we continue and we do a lot of things. We and another organization and the group, and maybe later we can share about a material about a success story from Gaza for the youth and network and initiatives. Do a lot of things to support our people in Gaza. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and please do share all the resources that you have. And for sure, we need to continue the conversation, not necessarily next year at PDAF, but we could think of roundtables and conversations about this specific topic. I really wanted to thank you, the 3 of you, and the struggle for digital and economic justice in Gaza is ongoing. But by shining a light on these barriers and working together, we take one step closer to meaningful change. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.